GMA, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening. My name is John Willett. Welcome to another edition of Potholes and Cadillac Dreams. Holy cow, it's episode 6. Episode 6? Are you kidding me? No, I'm not. I'm being perfectly honest. It's episode 6. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for watching. If you're listening to us through our many platforms, including Amazon and Spotify and Apple and all those other ones, we appreciate it. Thank you very much for listening. Please listen and subscribe. Listen and subscribe. Tell your friends and neighbors. Tell your family. Tell every single human being you come in contact with to like and subscribe. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just previously, that was the fabulous Potholers, and as you know, they are putting together a pay-per-view concert. I'm sure you all are looking forward to that. We look forward to seeing you and hearing from you on that, and it should be quite the event. They're trying to figure out whether they're going to do it at the Holiday Inn in Dubuque, Iowa, or I believe there's a place in Scottsdale, Arizona that may be available, but they're still working on that. Bugs are being ironed out. We'll get it done. This week, we wanted to talk a little bit about business. I've had lots and lots of potholes in my life in terms of business. Maybe not only potholes, but also I think we might cover a few lessons learned in the positive aspect. Specifically, we're going to cover a few things that happened to me when I was at Frontier Fruit Nut Company. As I said before, that was, without any shadow of a doubt, my favorite job of all time. I started there as a part-time salesperson back in, I think, September of 1980. And by June of 1984, when I left the company, I was regional manager in charge of 15 stores, including Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia, and one lonely outpost in Chicago, Illinois. It was a great time in my life. I met some wonderful people. Some people I have never, ever forgotten. Unfortunately, some people who are no longer with us. I believe specifically the woman who hired me, Janet McDonough, I do not believe she is alive. I wish she was because I miss her dearly, and I think about her almost every single day. She and I collect. Have you ever been in a situation, and this could be in anything, this could be a relationship, this could be, but specifically business, where you maybe apply for something, and the person you're interviewing is you just click. You can't really explain why. Maybe you're from different aspects of life. Maybe you're a woman, and you're being interviewed by a man, or maybe it's man, woman, woman, but for some strange reason, you just click like you've known each other for years and years. When Janet interviewed me, this is in, if you all are familiar with the D.C. area, this is Springfield, Virginia, Springfield Mall, which was a relatively new mall back then. She interviewed me in September of 1980 for a part-time sales position. And that's what I started as, part-time sales in Springfield. And I don't know why, but for some reason, after about 5-10 minutes, we were sitting there giggling like little schoolgirls. And we just got along so incredibly well. And that's, I guess, perhaps maybe a lesson learned is that if you get something like that happen to you, take advantage of it. I don't mean it in a bad way. Definitely don't mean it in a bad way. I mean it, here is this wonderful person who's reaching out to you, who you get along with, who has your same work ethic, maybe same attitude on life. If they're interviewing you and they like you that much, well, by all means, try to further that relationship. And Janet and I did. We became the best of friends. As a matter of fact, it was 11 years later, 1990. No, more than that, 13 years later, 1997. 1995. I apologize. 1995 when I was married for the second time. May 27, 1995, she actually drove with her husband, Ronald, to my wedding in Maryland. So she came from Pennsylvania, where she lives, I think Levittown, Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, to a little outpost in Maryland where it was kind of a farm situation. We got married outside, and she drove. It was a 3-hour drive, and she drove, and she wasn't that well then. She was sick, but she drove because she had to. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget how kind she was during the 4 years that I spent with Frontier, and how many doors she opened for me. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example of that. So it's about a month and a half maybe in, and I'm enjoying my job. I've become an assistant manager at the store, and I was really enjoying it. Now, Frontier Fruit Nut had an interesting concept. You would have a scoop. You had barrels of products. So imagine barrels of pistachios, and barrels of cashews, and barrels of macadamia nuts, and barrels of mixes, and barrels of carob, which was not an offshoot of chocolate, but a chocolate substitute, barrels of yogurt products, that type of thing. You would take a scoop, literally, and hold that out to people as they were walking by and see if they would sample your product. You would hope they would come in, sample your product, and then, of course, buy your product. I was pretty good at it. What a surprise. I could talk to folks as they were walking by, total strangers. And we were about a month and a half in, and Janet said to me, the owners, there were, I guess, childhood friends, Ira Rickless and Scott Corman. I remember their names. It's amazing. It just popped into my head. Ira's father was a guy by the name of Meshulam Rickless. I can't remember the name of the company that he owned, but he was a billionaire. He was world famous, and Ira was his son, and Ira was getting into retail, making a name for himself in the retail industry. And Frontier Fruit Nut was his first foray. He basically was in malls that his father owned, so that should tell you how much money was behind this operation. And then Scott Corman, I believe his background was more wines, importing, exporting wines, but he partnered with Ira in this venture. So Janet quietly told me, Ira and Scott are going to be here. They're going to be sitting up. Now, if you're familiar with the mall, with Springfield Mall, they had 2 levels. And in the spot where we were, which was on the J.C. Penney side, it was an end cap, an end unit in the mall. We were right next to them, and if you were on the second level, you could actually look down into where our store was. You could see our whole store from upstairs. There are actually benches along this little area where you could sit and you could watch the day go by, or in this case, spy on your store and see who the stars are. So Janet says to me, well, John, Scott and I are going to be here. They're going to be here about just when you get on, which at that time was about 4:30, 5 o'clock. I think you should put on a show. I said, why? She said, I can't tell you, but I think you should put on a show. So I did. I went out there. I didn't stay behind the counter. I went out. People would be sitting down. I'd go up to them. People would be going up and down the escalator right near us. I'd be talking to them. Anybody I saw, I would hit. And finally, Ira turned to Janet upstairs. They supposedly didn't know I was watching and said, well, that's our new manager for Tyson's Corner. Now, Tyson's Corner, if you all are from the DC area, you know how popular Tyson's Corner was, is really starting then. We were in the Tyson's Corner main area the store was going to be. And then I think they were either just starting to build or were in the process of building Tyson's 2, which was just down the way. Anyway, we were a new kiosk in Tyson's, and they promoted me to manager. And you could not help but succeed in Tyson's Corner, as you all know, who are from the DC area. If you're not from the DC area, imagine the most popular retail area that you have, and then double it, and that's the way Tyson's Corner was at that time. You couldn't help but succeed. It was only about a month and a half in. I think I became manager in November, and in January I was promoted to regional manager. So, all because Janet sidled up to me and said, Ira and Scott are going to be here. And I took advantage of it. So you take advantage of a situation that presents itself because of maybe a friendship with somebody that you've struck up while you're working in a company. And I certainly did that, and it certainly helped. It also helps to have a little luck. I had just been relieved, if you want to put it that way. That's a good way of putting it, relieved. Asked to leave, resigned under pressure from a job I had in a mortgage lending company. I was helping a gentleman. I was basically doing the paperwork while he was out selling, and he and I didn't get along. And I thought I was a better salesperson than he was, and I hated doing that much paperwork, and it was a miserable fit. I shouldn't have even taken the job. It was ridiculous. It was stupid. That was just the dumbest thing I think I've ever done in my life, is take this job with doing all the stuff that I hate doing, sitting behind a desk, and it was just horrible. So that day, I thought to myself, I was married at the time, by the way, first marriage. I thought, well, I certainly can't go home and tell my then first wife that I'm out of a job. She would be a little upset with me. So I went across the street to Springfield Mall, walked around. One of the first things I saw was Frontier Fruit and Nut, because I walked in on that side where JCPenney was. JCPenney was on one side of the mall. Montgomery Ward was on the other side. So I went on the JCPenney side, immediately saw they had help wanted signs all over the place for Frontier Fruit and Nut, and applied and chatted with Janet, and the rest is history. So luck could play a part in how well you do too. So if you find yourself on the receiving end of lots of luck, make sure you take advantage of it. You never know where it might come from. You never know when it might come. But if you get it, run with it. And don't be afraid of it. I certainly wasn't. And I had 4 of the best years of my life, in my working life, at Frontier Fruit and Nut. Let me check my note. As you know, you podcasters, I don't use notes. I'm right off the top of my head. But the YouTube folks seem to think when I turn away from the camera that I'm looking at stuff. And, that's not true. Yes, if you're handed an opportunity, it's basically what I said about luck, but if you're handed an opportunity, and I was handed several. I was handed the opportunity to impress the owners of Frontier Fruit and Nut, and I did. I was handed the opportunity of a lifetime to manage a store in a mall that was red hot. I mean, red hot. Like, their parking lots were jammed. They had rich people, because McLean, which is a very, very, very wealthy enclave in right near Tyson's Corner, those folks came in all the time. We had Bloomingdale's there. We had all kinds of high-end stores there. And rich folks just came by, and they wanted to be healthy, and they thought my stuff was healthy, and I wasn't going to dissuade them of that. So they would come in and they'd buy lots and lots of stuff. So if you're handed an opportunity, take advantage of it. And as I said, in January of 1981, I was made regional manager. At that time, it was, I think, 4 stores. I think we had 4. We ultimately had 15. Basically the same concept. We would either have in stores that were relatively small. The Springfield Mall store was the biggest. Springfield Mall store was by far the largest in terms of square footage that we had. But the other stores were relatively smaller. Some of them were in food courts, because obviously we sold food product. Others of them were near food courts. We try to get as near to anchors as we possibly could. And that's the phrase, boys and girls, that I was trying to remember a little while ago. But, well, I'm old, so I couldn't remember anchor. Anchor stores. JCPenney was an anchor store. If you're going to go into a mall, and malls are dying like crazy, try to get into an anchor store. Or if you're going into a strip center, what I would consider an anchor store would be the biggest big box of the bunch. Get as close to that as you can, because they're going to attract the most people, and then that way you're going to attract the most customers, and you're going to make, oh my goodness, money. And hopefully lots of it, because you're listening to this program, and I want you to make lots of money. And if you're watching this program, I want all of you to make lots of money. Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be nice, because then at some point when I do have my thousands and thousands of listeners and watchers, I can put out product and you can buy it. And then I can show you just what a good retailer I am. That, friends and neighbors, would be very cool, because then you go, oh, look at what a retailer is. Look at these sensational caps and T-shirts and mugs and tchotchkes and pens and all kinds of stuff. Don't make me think of too much stuff because I'm wearing a cap, so I immediately thought of caps, and that's good enough. So anyway, check the notes again. Here we go. Now this one is important because we tend to, once we get a position, I believe a lot of us tend to do a little bit of relaxing, and we go, oh, well, we got this job that's good, and we learn it, and we kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit, and we kind of coast a little bit, and we kind of take a little easy because, we put in a lot of effort to get the job, and now we got the job, and we think everybody likes us, and so everything's going well, and yada, 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 and don't do that. Don't do that. Because what I did, and Frontier Fruit and Nut is an absolute perfect example of this. When I became a part-time salesperson, I studied the product. I found out what product was best for us to sample, what product was worse for us to sample. For example, carob-coated raisins were really good. First of all, they didn't cost us that much. Second of all, people thought they were chocolate. Third of all, they were pretty good. And people would come in and they would buy carob raisins, and then they'd see other stuff, and of course we'd sample that to them. And that was really, really cool, and we didn't have that much of a challenge in terms of the amount of product we had to give away for the amount of product that we sold. We also carried macadamia nuts. Now, I had a store. I remember this. I had a store where my folks thought it just was the greatest idea in the world to sample macadamia nuts to the public because, oh gosh, how often do you get a macadamia nut? They're so expensive. Why, isn't that amazing that you would be sampling a macadamia nut to a total stranger walking by? And of course, when the total stranger found out that the macadamia nut was like $12.98 a pound, which was very high then. $12.98 a pound now, you'd probably just jump at it. But then, that was about the highest thing that we sold. And they were sampling macadamia nuts, and my heavens to Betsy, the accounting department for Ira's and Scott's company, they lost their collective minds. I hadn't known about it until they noticed that our costs were way out of whack in that particular store, and so I had to correct it, and I did, and it was not pretty. So, it's part of what I said, putting in the time immediately for rewards later. Put in the time immediately for rewards later. I had to put in the time. I had to basically retrain. By the way, if you saw me move there for a moment, for you YouTubers, this is a special treat for you. And only for you, because the podcasters, they couldn't see this, but I had to move in my chair because I had my cat Roxie, a long-haired black cat, on my lap while I was chatting with you guys, which is why I was a little bit away from the microphone, because she was asleep and I wanted to do this podcast because I only have so much time. So I had her on my lap, and now she just got off my lap, and she dug her nails into places that cats shouldn't dig their nails into. It's not polite, to be honest. It's not polite to have, for your cat, particularly when you're the feeder. I mean, in my family, I am the one that is the feeder, that cleans the poop, that, spends time with them, all that. She shouldn't be digging her nails there. I think it's just rude. It's rude to do, and I'm not a fan of it. And that's why you saw me get kind of uncomfortable in my chair, because she dug her nails in and then leapt off. And I may end up in the emergency room. You never can tell, but it's not good. So anyway, time. When I first got the part-time job, I told you I learned about the difference between carob raisins versus macadamia nuts. When I got the job as manager of Tyson's, I went around to each individual store in the mall and introduced myself and gave them all a little discount, a little bag of goodies, and we got a lot of business from mall folks in regards to that. This was way before social media and all that, but I did as much as I could to do any and all networking I possibly could. That took time, that took effort. I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. Didn't care, loved it, it was great. At that point, I was getting divorced from my first wife, who remarried way better, by the way. Just in case you're keeping track at home. She remarried so much better. Holy mackerel. This guy, I've seen him on the Facebook. He is as handsome as the day is long. She ended up having 3 of the most, and I'm not gay. I want you to know that. Maybe you think so because of the clothes I wear. No, I'm not. But her kids, she got 3 sons that are just about the most gorgeous kids I've ever seen in my life. There was a picture of them on the beach, and I thought to myself, that's why I didn't end up with that woman right there. Because, children are amazing. Anyway, I digress. We were divorcing. I had tons of time. I gave it to Frontier Fruit and Nut Company. So when I was there at Tyson's, I put together a great staff. They worked hard. I trained them hard. They did exactly what I asked them to do. They never gave me a moment's challenge. They really didn't. It was amazing. Then I got the opportunity to be regional manager. We built the region one store by one store. We ended up, like I said, with 15 stores. That would be 15 managers, but I also had 3 area managers. I also had a display manager. I also had a delivery manager. So roughly about 125 to 150 employees at one point. That was all under my purview, and I couldn't have been happier. But what I learned early on, and I think I learned it, early enough that it made a difference in the region, is I took the time to find the right managers, to find the right assistants, to find the right product combination for each individual store. I trained and trained and trained and trained and worked and worked and worked and worked. And it, for I would say close to a year and a half of the time that I spent at Frontier Fruit Nut, that region just smooth as silk. It ran like a top. It was terrific, but that was only after tons of work, tons of 12, 13-hour days, tons of trying to imagine exactly how to do things, tons of helping people get started as managers and the training, and then you have challenges where I had a store. I won't say where because those folks might still be around, but it was a store in my region. The accounting department at Frontier Fruit Nut was actually part of Michelle Merklis's, I believe, accounting department that Ira was able to use, I believe. It might be either or. The accounting department was amazing. We had a store, and they couldn't find, there was a challenge. They couldn't find where money was being stolen. They knew the money was being stolen. They just didn't know how, and they didn't know when, and they didn't know the process they were doing it, but they knew that there was money going out of the store. So basically what I had to do is go in on a Sunday night, and I had to fire everybody. And I mean, everybody was there. It was a special meeting. I asked everybody to be there. They might have thought there was for other reasons, but we had no clue how in the world to find the culprit or culprits or multiple culprits or whatever. So we fired everybody. And it was rough because those folks went out and said what a miserable son of a bitch I was, and how my store sucked, and how there were rats running around, and just bad-mouthing our store to beat the band. And I knew that was going to happen. So we had to start from scratch, and we started from scratch. And we hired a new manager, we hired a new assistant, and we hired new people, and you train. And I had to stay in this particular area for about 3 weeks. And I just lived there. Just had a hotel room, I just lived there. And 12 hours a day, and you just do what you have to do. Lesson learned. If the pothole was you gotta fire everybody, If the pothole is you can't find who your thief is, if the pothole is somebody's driving you completely crazy and driving your store to distraction or driving your business to distraction, get rid of them and then do what you have to do to make it better. Do what you have to do. The way to climb out of that pothole is to just do what you got to do. You take your hands, you lift yourself up, you get a toe hold, you pull yourself out of the pothole, and you just stand there and you go, okay, I got to fill this pothole and I got to move on. And that's what we did. That's flat what we did. We got it to where it was running pretty successfully, and then it continued to run successfully until I left the company in June of 1984. The reason I left the company in June of 1984 is because Ira went in a different direction and sold the franchises back to the franchisor. And I think you remember the story I told initially about Janet and I and how we clicked and how we just mind melded almost. Well, I had the same type of lunch with the vice president of the national company, Frontier Fruit and Nut, in the Springfield Mall. In June, it was like June almost to the exact day when I got the, not the exact day, but in June and September, same day, like June, I want to say June 14, June 15, somewhere around there. And yeah, there was nothing there. There was just nothing there. She was, I don't know how some folks get their job, but she and I just did not click at all. I mean, nothing. It was sad, really. And she asked me whether I wanted to stay. I said no. I had no job. I had no anything. I ended up actually, and this is another story down the road, but I ended up being the executive director. It just came to me as I was talking to y'all. The executive director of the Singles Over 35 Social Club. That's a true story. There used to be in the DC area a Singles Over 35 Social Club, and I was the executive director of it. I've never been an executive director. My present wife, Doreen, has been an executive director and very successful. As a matter of fact, a hell of a lot more successful than me. But that's what I was, the executive director of the Singles Over 35 Social Club. That would be in the terminology of, oh, how the mighty have fallen. I went from regional manager to executive director of the Singles Over 35 Social Club. So that might be a lesson learned too, but I'll be damned if I can figure out what that lesson is. Anyway, I want to make sure that we get done at the 30-minute mark, so we're going to close off here. That's just a few stories from my days with Frontier Fruit and Nut. I can tell you, if any of you are catching this and were part of that time in my life, thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you taught me far more than I could have ever taught you. It was an amazing time. That time from September 80 to June of 84 was one of the absolute best of my entire life. And the reason it was is because of the people that I met along the way during that time who might have worked with me. Some of the vendors we had were terrific. The mall management in most cases were superb to work with at that time. I mean, malls were the big thing and they were just amazing to work with. So if you were part of Frontier Fruit and Nut during that time and you knew me, thank you. Thank you very, very much for what you did for me. And I can never, ever repay you. All right, we're going to move on. In terms of our final two requests, as usual. Oh, let me bring up one thing that we're going to do. I don't know whether it's going to be next week or the week after. I will try to let you all know about it. But there's a incident in my life, probably the ultimate pothole in my life, where I embarrassed myself in front of 97,000 people. We refer to it in my family and among my friends as the story. And my best friend, Jeff Hetrick, has agreed to come on to the broadcast because he was the one who was intimately involved with me in that event. He has told me, quite frankly, that there are some items that I would not remember that he would. And so he would like to come on and chat a bit about the story and tell you all a little bit about how it all came about and what we did and how bad I was and lots of other good stuff. So either next week or the week after, we'll have Jeff Hetrick on and we'll cover the story. And you will laugh. Oh, you'll laugh so hard. Oh my goodness, you laugh because I was so bad. I was so bad. I was bad. Anyway, finally, Demi Bennett. Demi Bennett. If you know Demi Bennett, if you talk to Demi Bennett, let's give another hint, if you work out with Demi Bennett and you've happened to listen to this podcast and think, the old man's kind of okay. Hey, Demi, I think you'd have a good time talking with him. It doesn't seem like he wants to talk to you about what you do. He wants to talk about, your journey and how you got to where you are, because it sounds like it's the exact opposite of him. Because at the age that she started doing what she was doing, I couldn't get out of my own way. Honestly, I had no clue what I was going to do other than I wanted to stay in the country club and be spoiled rotten, which is not the way she started. So it would be great to chat with her, I think. Demi Bennett, if you're out there, if you know Demi Bennett, I would love to chat with her. And my friend Christy Martin Salters, I'm hoping that she's been following us. She is, again, probably one of the greatest women boxers to ever come out. She has a book out now. She has a Netflix documentary, Deal with the Devil. You should watch it because it is amazing. You should get her book because it's well written. You should follow her on Facebook, and you should follow her on Instagram. You should follow her on Twitter or wherever else she is, because she does a lot of good work with her group Christie's Champs. And I would love to chat with her. I'm hoping that she will at some point get a hold of me and say that she would like to come on, and we could spend 30 minutes to an hour chatting about all the things that she's done and all the things that she's doing. So those two things. And then next week, I am not really sure. I think we're going to stay on business because I'd like to put some of these on LinkedIn. I think some of the things that I talk about are some items that, a lot of business people just need to be reminded of. And I'm going to try to put some of them on LinkedIn as well. And if you have anything you'd like to talk to me about, if you have a topic you'd like to talk to me about, as you all know, I am 67 years old. I have probably, if I haven't done said topic, I know about said topic, and I could certainly talk about said topic in great detail. I would love to hear from you. So my email again is John Willett, and that's all lowercase, JOHNWILLETT1218 at gmail.com. Please get hold of me. Love to hear from you. Love to have you like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. That was your inner brain. That was your inner mind talking to you. Like and subscribe. Okay. That's done. Thank you very much on behalf of Roxie, my cat, who seemed to enjoy at least 2/3 of our get-together today. Thanks very much. Have yourself a great weekend. Have yourself a great week. Have yourself just a great. And whatever you're doing right now, I hope you're having a great time doing whatever it is you're doing. And thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.